In Kazakhstan, the craft developed over the centuries, leaving a legacy of unique products of artisans, amazing wealth of artistic imagination, and the perfection of form, a respect for one's heritage, traditional cultural values. These are the main tasks of the current generation. The horse is the man's wings, as the old Kazakh proverb says, and it has profound meaning. The horse has always been a faithful friend and a companion of the man of the steppe, the warrior and his herdsman. It is thanks to these amazing graceful animals that the Kazakh people were able to cope with any difficulties in this hike and in everyday household chores. No wonder the people measured their wealth by the number of horses, and therefore expanded their lands in order to find new pastures for their herds. And it was on horseback that the Kazakh people defended their lands from enemies. One of the important art fields of the Kazakh folk artisans in the past was the decoration of horse equipment, their saddles, cappers, and harness. The saddle became a very important symbol because of its main purpose, being to make the landing comfortable, to distribute the weight of the rider, and thereby protect the back of the horse. Initially, the ancient nomads tied a semblance of a pillow to the back of the animal. She helped to keep the horse back and to control the movement, to protect the back of the horse from rubbing. In combat, this design was uncomfortable. The rider sat tightly wrapped on the horse's body with his legs, and all the fluctuations in the jump were transmitted to the horse. It was difficult to aim from the bow and to control a horse that rides at full galloping as well as simultaneously aiming was a difficult task even for a skillful warrior. Over time, the saddles were invented. The first was without a backrest, and then they began to constantly improve, reaching the most harmonious and comfortable design both for the rider and the horse. Unfortunately, there is no such educational institution that teaches the craft of the manufacturing of saddles and horse harnesses, so the master saddlers are very rare. Today we will get acquainted with such a unique master, for whom it is not just a favorite thing, but the work of his entire family that he inherited from his great-grandfather. The unique master for making saddles and horse harness, Serikqazy Nurgaliyev, was born in Semipalatinsk. He currently lives and works in the Almaty region in the Shibir village. Since childhood, even when he was a small child, he was very fond of drawing and making something with his own hands. One can say with certainty that his talent is in his blood. After all men in his family were skilled craftsmen in making horse harness and saddles. His great-grandfather Nurgali was a famous saddle master, and so from generation to generation, their accumulated knowledge and skills was passed among the men of his family. From his youth, he learned from his father the skills of processing leather and wood, and then gradually he came to the manufacturing of saddles and horse equipment. After graduating from the Pedagogical Institute, Serikqazy Nurgaliyev worked as a teacher of drawing for many years. And today he brings up many students with whom he shares his vast experience. After all, he firmly believes that his main goal is to not allow the interruption of this craft and to instill the love of creativity in young people. He himself learns constantly and always improves his skills. Many of his works are familiar to many, as he was repeatedly the winner of competitions among the masters of Kazakhstan. For quality, reliability, and beauty of his products, he has earned wide recognition even outside the country. As the master explains to us, This technology of manufacturing saddles by our ancestors differs significantly from the production of similar products and cattle from most other nations. After all, these features are inextricably linked with cattle breeding and the nomadic way of life, when one had to travel with it for long distances. It can be safely asserted that this invention turned the course of history, and for many centuries determined the form of the development of mankind. Therefore, in the steppe, a good saddle was highly valued. Making a saddle is a time-consuming and responsible process. He tries to adhere to the technologies used by his great-grandparents, but he does also use some modern technological capabilities. Our great-grandfathers had to be able to work on leather, wood, and metal. A saddle is an excellent example of combining these different materials in one product, the master told us. And really, when you go into the workshop, it is as if you are moving back in time. Many of the tools are recreated copies of the traditional tools used by the saddle masters hundreds of years ago. There are so many things. The eye can go to all kinds of sketches, workpieces, tools, and the tools for processing leather, wood, and metal hung on the walls. After all, in the manufacture of horse equipment, a variety of natural materials is used: wood, metal, leather, and even semi-precious stones. The saddle and the bridle are perhaps the most necessary attributes in equipping a horse. The saddle is designed not only for the convenience of the rider, but it also plays an important role in maintaining the healthy back of the horse, because the weight of the rider is distributed over the entire structure of the saddle. Whereas while riding without a saddle, the weight of the rider falls to one point. However, an incorrect selection saddle can cripple the back of a horse. Therefore, making a saddle is a very important process. It requires maximum dedication and attentiveness. Each stage of making a saddle is very important. Despite the diversity of the saddle, they have a common principle of structure. At the heart of any saddle is the frame. It is called a lentic. It is made of wood and covered with upholstery. The front part of the saddle is called the front bow, and the back of the saddle is the back bow. The belts that fix a saddle onto the horse are called the girths. The girths in turn are attached to the saddle. The foot of the rider is placed in the stirrup, and the part of the saddle to which the knee of the rider adjoins is called the wing. Our ancestors were wise people, Serikqazy told us. Everything they did was filled with deep meaning. And according to the master, making saddles of incredible quality and beauty by ancient artisans was a common matter. Now it's time to revive these traditions, otherwise all secrets could be lost. Since ancient times, the wooden frames of the saddle, as a rule, were hollowed out of a single piece of solid wood. Sometimes the masters made it compound. To make it, the masters chose solid wood. And the saddle has always been easy due to the use of the right wood species, which are light and durable, due to the viscosity of the fiber. The master takes the desired small piece of wood. He then commensurates with the measurements made above, and using a chisel and plane, he gives it its desired shape. The basis of the most saddle is one, its frame. It consists of two shelves connected by arches, the combs, which would later become the front and back bows. The frame can differ in length, curvature, inclination of the shelves, in their width and height of the ridges. Serikqazy prepares the necessary parts of the future saddle. After each stage, he cleans and polishes the surface of the wooden parts. The wooden frame is solidly durable, withstands heavy loads, but is also heavy. This is the oldest and most traditional type, often made to order according to the individual standards of the rider of the horse. The frame of the multi-layered wood is less durable. It can break if the horse is heavily loaded, or if the horse falls onto the saddle. All other details are attached to the base of the saddle. Serikqazy carefully evaluates every detail, tries it on and adjusts it. There should not be a slight mistake. The main parts are fastened with metal bolts and carefully tightened. Again and again they polish all the details, achieving the ideal smoothness of the wooden surface. Next, you need to tighten the design with leather, and for this it uses high-quality, well-processed leather. A great experience in working with leather allows you to choose the best one, which will last for many years. He carefully prepares the leather beforehand and adjusts it to the base and stretches it according to the shape of the future saddle. The stitches securing the leather parts must be smooth, fixed without protruding threads. The skin itself should be smooth without cracks, not damaged and flexible, and not over-dried. Of considerable interest are the metal parts of the harness. For the manufacture of the horse harness, the master uses mainly brass, bronze, and copper. For more fine work, he uses a gasoline burner. More often it is used for soldering the small decorative elements. For this, he uses an acid that fills the pores in the metal and makes a smooth surface. To join the metal with each other, you need a solderer, an alloy of silver, tin, or other low-melting metals. For successful soldering, it is necessary to feel the temperature of the materials. Their connection is possible only when equal heating is achieved. The master shares his secrets. In the decoration of various parts of the details of the horse harness, there is also embossing and application on the skin, carving, and incrustation with stones. The main elements of the decor of where the master sits are the metal plates and plaques of the most varied configurations. To do this, the metal heats and softens with a gas burner, which gives a very strong flame and pours a certain shape. After its cooling, it takes a shape, and the master proceeds the production of the patterned metal plates. For this purpose, the method of stamping is best suited. A special matrix with cutout patterns is placed on a piece of lead. After several blows with a hammer, a notch is formed onto the form of the original stamp. A thin metal plate is placed on the notch, and a matrix is placed on top. A couple of blows with a hammer, and it completely takes the right shape. Thus, it is possible to mold many similar products at a time. After the engraving, the grinding stage is performed to give the object a characteristic luster of a noble metal. Grinding and polishing of parts are made on a felt wheel. A machine with a disc is made of processed wool. In the old days, this was done with the usual piece of felt. Despite the variety of decorative tools used by the craftsman, each finished saddle is a single, completed, and well-designed art object. Metal plates alternating with warm and toned parts of the skin form a dark brown to reddish hue. The contrasting combination of 3 dimensions and flat patterns, all of this creates an expressive artistic image and emphasizes the distinct style of each saddle. The master uses the totemic imagery honed by our ancestors, the eagle, leopard, and the roe deer, as well as the images of many other animals. The ornamentation of metal plates is strictly geometric, consisting of circular objects, dots, commas and triangles, and other figures, which together will form a complex, intricate ornamental composition that excellently stands out on the surface of the saddle skin. At the same time, it should be noted that according to the differences in shape and decor of the saddle, common artistic patterns due to their fluctuational purpose can also be seen in them. The master tries to make the plates mostly flat, elongated ovals or semi-oval in shape. It turns out that this is necessary so that there are no sharp corners that could cling to the rider's clothing. Their form in some cases depend on the location of the harness and is determined by the creative imagination of the taste of the master, his desire to give the subject an original form, to diversify the outline of the plates. In the olden times, every Kazakh master was engaged in saddle making, even if he didn't know the basics of jigging or horsemanship. The old masters were also skillfully adjusting the saddle for any horse. But in addition to the saddles and horse harness, the master is also engaged in manufacturing of national belts, whips, using animal elements, decorative ornaments, and colored stones. Serikqazy Nurgaliyev doesn't stop to learn about saddlery business. Even after becoming a famous master, he uses the materials of old books, scientific research, and studies museum exhibits and old ethnographic and photographic materials. The Kazakh people have a great wealth. These are preserved traditions. Crafts are traditions of work and art. Some of them originated in antiquity, but continue to develop in our days. The bearers and custodians of folk art are masters, artists who transmit from generation to generation the experience accumulated over the centuries. In the next program, we will introduce you to an amazing master who puts in his products not only the warmth of his hands, but all of his heart.